white ducking. Young, unbelievable.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome again to Channel 21's Hometown Cable. And we're here with the president of the Champlain Telephone Company, David Southwick, a native of Champlain and a historic family here. Southwicks have been here for many years. Not this man, he hasn't been that many years, but we'll get into that a little later. We want to thank Dave for giving us the opportunity to come in and tour the building here and the garage out on Ridge Road and to tell us about the telephone company. And thank you very much for saying yes when we asked you, Dave.
That's right. Welcome.
Okay, we'll start off just a little bit in the beginning. Tell me what's happened to Dave Southwick since he left school at NCCS when he graduated.
Well, I graduated from Syracuse University. I called in service during the Korean War.
Army?
In the Army.
Yes.
And went to Korea. Came home, and my father was running the telephone company here with my grandfather. There wasn't really any room for Dave Southwick, so I went to work for International Harvester. Sold tractors in Charlotte, North Carolina. Worked for International Harvester until my father's death. And then I came home and took over his position as general manager here of the telephone company.
And when was that?
1959.
59,
Yeah.
and then you became president along the way?
At that time, Ken Knapp was president. And when Ken passed away, I became president. And that was in 1965.
And you are still president
I'm
now,
still president.
and your son Joe is with the company now?
Joe works as my assistant. And I'm as president and general manager. Joe works as the assistant general manager.
Okay, and your daughter Nancy, when she's not going to college?
Yes, she's a golfer.
In the summer, okay. And not only is Dave Southwick and his father Charlie with the telephone company, but it started with these two men up here on the picture. Right? Tell us about that, David.
This gentleman here is my grandfather, O.E. Southwick, and this gentleman is Morris Knapp. The two of them started the telephone company in about 1903. The two families still are very active in the company. Mrs. Knapp, Morris's daughter-in-law, is still very active here, and some of her family work here. The evolution has been between those two families as to where it is now.
Okay, so what we're talking about is Orrin and Morris Knapp. Then the two sons, Kenneth Knapp and Charlie, operated the business, and now it's his son is not here, but his widow is still with the company,
Right.
and then Charlie's son is yourself.
Yep.
And we also know that Charlie had another son named John, very well known as Dr. John. Just the two boys, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Just the two boys, and your father was a farmer also.
Yes, my
Right.
grandfather was a farmer. My father ran the farm for my
As a
grandfather.
matter of fact, didn't your grandfather own that big white building across from the shop, or the
Yes,
Sheridan?
we did.
Right?
Yes, that's where I was born. John and I lived there until we were in high school.
I guess when I was going to high school with you, you came along, and I think you were a freshman when I was a senior or something like that. And we did play ball together, Dave, and you've grown.
Well,
We've
yeah,
both
well,
grown
we both-
since then. All right. We're going to take a break from this segment and go talk with an engineer who has to leave the building, and then we'll get back to Dave and Charlie. We're standing with J.R. Davenport, one of the new kids on the block, compared to Dave, who's been here since he was just a child. J.R., you've been with the company how long?
8 years.
8 years, and you came from where, J.R.?
I worked for the company that installed the equipment originally.
And your home?
Hopedale, Ohio originally.
Hopedale, Ohio, and your background, just a little bit of...
I graduated from technical school in '70 and worked for ITT, North Electric, and United since then.
So when they put this new equipment in, this brand new equipment, you came here and then you stayed on with it.
Yes.
So you're the expert
Well,
on this equipment?
not an expert,
You're
but I helped.
most
install it.
knowledgeable here.
Well, me and the people that
Okay,
maintain it.
all right. He hesitates in what he's going to say about that. JR, you're a member of the community now. You live, I think, between here and Moores, right? On that,
Correct.
on the west side. That home probably belonged to whom when you bought it?
LaForest owned it originally.
Larry?
Yeah.
I think he owned the whole road. Larry LaForest owned that whole road between here and Moores, and JR got one of them. Okay, JR, what is your title here and what is your job at the company?
I'm the equipment engineer and the central office supervisor.
And what does that mean to me and the people out there who don't know much about telephones?
I propose equipment that's needed to maintain the service, and I oversee the maintaining of the equipment in the central office.
Okay. When we think of the Champlain Telephone Company and living on Church Street, we think of Charlie Pitt Fido for many years. Now, who is doing what now, what Charlie was doing then?
That's been split between Joe Southwick, who's the new assistant general manager, and myself.
Okay, so I'm going to have to say that Charlie's been replaced by two people.
That's true.
We'll talk to Charlie. I talked to Charlie the other night from Florida. He's on his way back up to the lower part of New York for the summer. He and Gloria are getting along fine. They've got children all over the United States, so they spend a week in the west, in the south, and in the north.
He's got it made. He can stay in
He's
warm
got it
weather
made
all
now,
year.
correct. Okay, I'm standing with a Champlain Moore's Rouse's Point telephone book of 1957 and 58 that JR handed to me because I was asking about the old numbers that we used to have, and to give you an example of a number from Moore's in here. I was going to give you an example of Moore's. They're probably out of order. Let's take, for instance, Sable. Numbers were like 56F12, 13F6. My number in Champlain when I first got married in the early 50s was 2B. And so that's changed. In here my number is Axminster. And that's the same as 29 now. So the number is exactly the same I had in 57. I now have 33 years later. It's still the same. We'll like to go in and see some of your equipment, JR. Can we proceed to another location?
Sure.
Very good.
Mainframe room, yeah.
Okay, JR and I are now in what is called the mainframe room, and I know about as much of that as you do, and we're going to find out. I'm asking, what is the mainframe room?
The mainframe is a main distribution frame. It's where the cables from the outside plant, which are directly connected to the houses, interface with the equipment from the central office, where the dial tone is provided.
Are you telling me then that every phone in your whole system has a separate wire here?
Every private line.
It does.
If it's a multi-party line, it will come into here, and it could be on 1, 2, 3, or 4 cable pairs, depending on where they're at.
Okay, let's look down here and see how this wire comes in. Calvin, you'll see the big housing here for the big wires are in the big black ones, is that right?
Yeah, those are 900 pair, I believe. Cables.
900 pairs of wire in each one.
I believe they're 900.
Okay, that's an example, close enough. So there's 1,800 pairs of wires in those two black housings down below. Okay, now I'd like to get an example, and I know some of my questions are out of order in the sense that they can't be answered, just say so, JR, but I want to call Calvin right now. All right, I'm at home. So I dial 298 and I dial his number. What happens to my signal? I have a touchstone, so I push in my little numbers, and what happens to that signal?
When you come off hook, the central processing unit of our company computer will recognize that you have come off hook and provide dial tone. When you start to dial, each of the digits as you dial them will be recorded through a key call receiver and stored in the memory. Once it's received all digits so that it knows what the call is, it will then send the call to the called party.
Doesn't have to come through here, though. How does it get into the building? Right along through here?
Each customer has a cable pair, as we mentioned. When that cable pair is tied directly to a line in the central office, that line is where the dial tone is provided and where the reception of the digits is recorded to the processor.
So there is a connection with my line to Calvin's line, either mechanically or electronically.
Electronically only.
And then the next time I call somebody else, they take mine and connect it to another electronically.
Right.
Okay. That's as close as we're going to get unless we get into a complete telephone course, which we're not going to do. Now, what if I'm calling, if someone in Moore's is calling Calvin?
Moore's has a mainframe similar to this.
In a building in Moore's?
In a building in Moore's,
okay.
right. And when they make a call, they get their dial tone from Champlain's computers also. So any call that's made within any of the exchanges will receive dial tone from the Champlain processors. It'll receive the digits, and upon recognition of the where the call is to be terminated, send the call.
Okay, now, so there's a trunk then, or I guess you call it a trunk line, a main line, that comes from Moore's to Champlain.
It's all done over a T1 system. There's 24 channels on each T1 system, and you get one channel assigned whenever you come off hook.
Okay.
And that is assigned for the duration of your call.
Suppose 97 people in Moores want to call Champlain at the same time. Can they all get through at the same time?
As long as they're not all in the same line switch.
Okay.
You can have 48 people simultaneously with dial tone out of any 350 line group of numbers.
So what's the maximum that could call Champlain at one time if they were on separate, approximately?
From Moores, there would be approximately 190.
Oh, wow, okay.
One instant.
We don't have too many problems there then. At one time, I remember in talking to Ross's Point, we had problems many years ago.
That's
Go
when there
back-
was physically trunks
Okay.
between the 2 points. And you could only have a call per trunk. So if you had 20 trunks between the 2 points, you could only have 20 calls.
Okay, is this electrically operated or battery operated, or is it a battery backup?
The equipment is run off of the two 400 amp chargers.
That are in back, right?
Right, with batteries as a filter.
Yes, I see some storage batteries back there, so that if the electricity goes off, it automatically throws it onto the battery?
Right, the batteries are filtering and they're online all the time. If the AC would go off, the batteries automatically will hold the office for 6 to 8 hours. But
Okay.
we have an emergency generator that comes
Okay.
on.
All right, another question I've often heard, or a statement made, is that it's dangerous to pick up your phone and use it when there's a storm.
It's not as dangerous as it used to be, but it's
Okay.
still not a good idea.
It's not a good idea. So you're saying if you can avoid the call, then don't.
Right.
Right. Okay. And how old is this equipment here with the telephone company?
This equipment was put into service in June of '82.
That's when you came with the company. So you helped to install this or install this? Or supervised it?
I supervised the installation.
And then you stayed out with the telephone company. What's the room we have behind us?
This is the carrier room.
The which?
This is the carrier room. This is where all the facilities interconnect between Champlain and New York Tel and Plattsburgh, the AT&T facilities and the New York Tel facilities in Albany.
So these have items that plug in. And back years ago, when they used to have a telephone, you'd take your line and you'd plug it into somebody else. It was physically done that way back in the early 50s and late 40s, correct?
This is the actual carrier equipment here.
That's the equipment that carries it here. So it goes into the mainframe, then it comes in here?
When you're making a call from Champlain to a location outside of the 518 area code, when you get dial tone, your originating portion will be the same to where it receives the digits and recognizes where the call is to be terminated. At that point, it'll put it on a PCM line that is terminated in the AT&T office in Albany.
Now, there's not an awful lot of mechanical in phone calls anymore. Is that correct?
In the ITT 1210 office that we have, the only mechanical portion of the call is a relay that operates when the ringing actually takes place on the line.
Okay. In general electronics, the less mechanical applications you have, the less breakdown you would have. Is that correct? That way, if you buy an old-style TV with the clicking tuner, that's what's going to give you problems first.
Normally.
And a calculator, the only on and off thing you have many times is the old switch used to turn on and off. Yeah. Otherwise, it's electronic. Okay. Do you have, as a general rule, much breakdown?
No, we have very little breakdown.
Right.
The biggest problem you have is, of course, with lightning and so forth.
Outside the trees, the branches, right?
Right, and it also, you'll get an effect on the line cards occasionally where the transmission will be degraded. We have test equipment that automatically tests the lines, and normally we pick that up before the customer recognizes it.
Do you have like a fuse that stops damage?
Yeah, the red and black modules on the frame
Or the mainframe?
are gas tube protection.
Okay, so that it would blow something before it blow your circuit, so to speak.
Right, that
Okay.
acts as a fuse, and there's also a protector at the entrance to each house
Okay.
to protect it from...
There is in each house. Okay, let's go back in to see the mainframe again. Calvin has gone down into the subterranean basement here underneath this mainframe, and he's showing some pictures. We're still up here, and JR is going to try to explain what he's seeing down there.
The two large cables that are coming in are the 900 pair cables that go outside to the various locations throughout the village. The large object is a splice case where the inside cables coming from the protector modules on the mainframe are connected to the outside cable.
Okay, and then There's wires on the ceiling, I understand, lots of wires suspended under the ceiling here. Is that right, Calvin, underneath here somewhere?
They have these lasers into an octopus of cables. Each one has, I'd say, a dozen or so coming out. Yeah, the ones coming out of the other end are the ones that go up to the mainframe.
Okay, that gives you an idea that it's not all here where you can see it. And Calvin, you can show him the ladder. He just went down. He felt like a fireman on the way down. We're back upstairs, and it's Bob Venn standing with J.R. Davenport, and we're still in the mainframe room. And this is one of the protectors that I didn't know existed, but this is what they are. And here you see them on the back of each of these areas, so that if there is a sudden impulse or whatever, it will blow this, or this will interrupt it, and then they can put another one or reset it, whatever they do. I notice the air conditioning is on. You have to take care of this equipment, keep it cool.
Yeah, the air conditioners run summer and winter.
So we're talking about 50-degree temperature outside, 55, and we've got the air conditioner going on the inside. We're standing, as most of you people know, that the building that the telephone company is in was the former convent for St. Mary's Academy, where the sisters lived here. This was built somewhere in the middle to late 60s, and I believe this was the kitchen where all the utensils is in here, and this was kind of like a little eating area for the morning. And then off to our right, over where the other equipment is, will be the actual dining room, and they had their den or living room where they had their music and where they gathered in the evening. And this has been completely done over inside, and it's been revamped by the telephone company. And we'll go into the other section, because when the signal comes here, it then goes to the other equipment. We'll just look at that very quickly. We've gone into what's called the Service Bureau, and here's a familiar face you've seen on Channel 21 many times. Arnie Beal, of course, also of the town board of the town of Champlain, formerly, I think, the village board. Were you in the village board in Rochester? A little bit in the village board, and garage sales and flea markets, and he gets around the community very well. And Arnie, you are the manager, director?
Temporary Service Bureau Chief.
Temporary Service Bureau Chief. What does that mean to the people in Channel 21 land?
Well, what we do here is we assign the numbers. We also wire the numbers to the cable pairs.
You mean a new telephone number?
New telephone number coming in. What happens is if we receive a work order, and it comes as a yellow copy like this, we have a white copy to match that yellow copy. Now what happens is that we assign the telephone number. We also assign the LTN and the cable pairs. And what we do is we program it into the system.
And this is before anyone goes out and physically puts my new phone in? Okay, so I move into the community, and I call here, and I say, I want a new telephone. Now, I speak to someone up in the main office?
Well, you call the main office.
And they would refer me here?
No, they would handle all your paperwork.
Okay.
Now, this paperwork that we have is a result of the main office.
Okay, then when this gets, then you would assign one of your service people to go out and put my phone in?
Well, he also gets a copy.
Okay.
Now there are, I think there are 4 copies of this type here. The central office, or the main office, gets a copy. We get a copy. The installer gets a copy. This is the installer's copy right here that he gets. So when he gets ready to do it, he hands me the work order that's yellow copy. I then pull the white copy out, which is in my file here, and we program that number for him.
Into your computers?
Into the computer.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
after we program it, we wire it in the frame.
Okay.
Take it from the LTN to the cable pair.
And my number would have a distinct location, and there would be my number.
Yes.
As an individual. Now, is it true that if I were to move from Church Street, where I live, to a new home the other side of Mason's Corners, and I'm still in the 298 area, could I keep my same number?
Oh, yes.
I can keep my same number, so that the wire going to my house has nothing to do with my number. It's whatever's assigned. Okay.
It's just a method to carry that number to you.
Okay, so if I move 6 times, I can still have the same number. Okay. Is that usual in many of the telephone areas, as far as you know, not only Champlain?
Well, most of your new systems today are like that.
You can do that. Okay. And how long have you been with the telephone company?
I started in 1959.
He's an older man here. This
about
is
10
one
years ago,
of
isn't
the older men. Yes, that's a few years ago. Yes, you've got your 30 years in, haven't you?
No, not yet.
59?
Well, I quit for 2 years.
Okay, you're very close, all right. I thought my figuring was bad.
No,
Thank you
no,
very,
you
very
have to
much, Arnie.
understand, no.
How many people are involved in the service department?
Well, Julie Dubois generally works the service bureau.
Okay.
But she's on vacation right now, so I take over when she's gone.
Okay, how many men do you have out installing? Would you call that service work outside?
Well, there's 1 man for Champlain. 2 men work Rouse's Point. 1 man works Rouse's Point.
You mean that if
Morris.
all phones installed in the village of Champlain, all done by that one person?
Yes, most of the time.
Okay, and if I call in today, how soon could I have a phone, approximately?
Generally, they work on a period of 5 days max, but generally
Okay.
it's about 3 days. That's working days now.
Okay.
You don't count Saturday and Sunday.
You don't count them. When you're waiting for your phone, you count them.
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Arnie. And we're going to leave the service bureau. Okay, JR is holding, what would we call it, a panel?
This is a quad line card. It contains 4 subscriber lines.
4 different people would be on this, and they don't have to be a party line. Or is that a
No.
party line?
That's 4 separate lines.
4
You
separate
can-
lines.
If these were 8 party lines, you could have up to 32 people served off this one card. If 8 people on each individual line.
Look at this intricate work in here and how well laid out. And on the back is all the actual wiring, the way that they're all soldered together. And you can just see the little drawings on here as to how they're connected. And can these be repaired if something goes wrong? Or do you
We
just get it?
normally send them back to the company that manufactures them for repair.
Okay, so this is for every 4 people would have one of these.
If they were 4 private
Four
lines.
private lines, right?
Yes.
So if you had a private line, you're one of these 4. You got 25% of this card. What happens to this card now that we got 4 new phones, okay, brand new, and they all on this one card? What do you do with it?
We plug it into the slot that the card is assigned to.
Okay.
There's 64 lines on each shelf. Each one is identified as 0 through 4 and so forth up to the 64th line. In each shelf, and you have 5 shelves, so it gives you a total of 320 lines available out of each frame.
Okay, then you see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frames here, and there's more on the other side, same
And
type
there's
of thing.
2 additional.
What's the noise we hear in the background? Is that the fluorescent light?
And that's a static converter we use to convert the DC from our batteries to AC for running our IBM computer, so that we don't lose a computer during power outages.
Okay, so somewhere along the line, when I'm calling Calvin, it would go from my section to his section some way in here electronically?
Right, the cable pair that comes from the outside plant terminates on the frame, then there's a jumper ran from that to the line equipment, which is another cable that comes directly to each of these lines.
Mind-boggling, really. There's no way that I can understand this, and I don't expect you people. We're not going to give a test on this at all, so just enjoy, and we're going to get to something you enjoy. You will understand much better, but this is it. Now, this section here is a completely different looking board completely. There are no cards here. What is this? How does this tie in?
This is the main power distribution bay. There's 6 100 amp or 8 100 amp fuses in here that distributes to the individual power panels at the end of the base. The second one down is the ringing generators. They're 50-watt ringing generators that provide the ringing to the telephone line when it's ringing.
Now, these various meters obviously tell you something that it's operating correctly.
This is the total load on the office, according to the fuse that we've got identified, 1
Okay.
through 10. The meter down there is the current being drawn, or the voltage being drawn on the office, shows it at 52 volts.
Now, it's warmer in here than it was in the other room. Is that playing that way?
Well, we turned the air conditioner off so that it didn't make noise.
So that's why it's, I thought that was just, okay, we
No,
turned the air conditioner off and we're underneath some lights in here, so we're going to turn that back on before we, go out.
There's a lot more equipment in here to generate heat.
Okay. Is there anything else we can see in here that would be different, that would tell us anything, JR?
The 2 bays, the one with the no smoking sign,
Right here?
yeah, and the one adjacent to it are the actual computers that operate the office. All the call information will be stored in the memory banks, the 256K memory banks at the bottom of the 3rd bay up, which records all the information for the call, and also has the processor memory, which decides what to do with the call and translates it once it receives all the information that's dialed into it.
When they say, Calvin now has the camera on that unit you were talking about that's recording the calls. Now, not to confuse people or to make them worried at all, you're not recording their conversation. You're recording the time that they're on the phone, right?
No, we are restricted. We cannot record any information without a warrant from the proper authorities.
Okay, you're not recording the conversation and you're not listening in either.
No.
But you're recording the time they're on the phone.
All the call setup, all the information received from the subscriber to the terminating party on the other end, wherever it may be, is recorded in the computer. And once the call is terminated, then if it's a billing call, it'll dump that call to the billing records. If it's a local-to-local call, then the information's just dropped.
Just dropped. So that, I was going to ask you that there. So there is no record kept at all of how many calls I make in a month or anything like that?
Not at present.
Not at
That is
present.
available in the system, but we're not incorporating.
But I make as many calls as I want. It doesn't affect my bill, right, correctly? Now, when I'm looking over here at two of these panels, I notice there are two that are crossed. They're not straight up and down like the rest. Is there a reason for that?
That's just the way we identify a spare card in the frame.
So those in there are not being used?
Correct.
Oh, I got that. Got it. Okay, very, very clean in here, you'll notice. There's not a lot of it. You don't want any dust, obviously.
That's true.
You don't need dust in here whatsoever. And this equipment is all 8 years old, back in '82?
The new processors were changed out in August of last year. We changed out the complete processor complex to enable us to provide the class features, SS7 signaling, Syntrex features as they come along.
Okay, now let's suppose I do make a long-distance call to my daughter in Plattsburgh. That would keep track of how many minutes I was on,
Right.
the number I called,
Correct.
and then that would go up to another computer upstairs?
No, that is all maintained right here. The only time it would go upstairs is if it was an operator-handled call.
How does it get on my bill?
The call is contained within the system. As soon as it's terminated, it goes into a buffer. Whenever 9 calls are setting in the buffer, it'll dump it to a mag tape unit.
Okay, we're going down here, and this is the unit you're talking about?
Right. This
And
is
that
our
is
mag
tape?
tape unit.
Okay. If you can see this, Calvin, from... All right.
Now, all the calls are recorded on here, and daily we take this off, and it's taken out to the commercial office, and the bills are rated and kept in the computer for billing at the end of the month.
Now, I know that I make mistakes like other people. I don't like to admit it, but I make a mistake, and I dial the wrong number. And I'm calling Texas. And I say, oh my gosh, she said, I'm sorry, your sister's not here. This is not your sister's number. And I hang up immediately, 30 seconds, 15 seconds. I then can call the operator and say, I made a mistake in dialing, right?
Right.
And she will cancel that call, I understand, right?
No, she can't cancel the call once it's completed. She just writes a credit. for
Okay,
it.
she writes a credit, but I don't get charged for it.
Right.
That's the main thing. I was thinking, I don't want to get charged, and that happens, folks. If you make a mistake, you don't have to pay for your mistake in that instant. The telephone company pays for your mistake. All right, and now this a different type of a...
This is our test board. We have access to all of our outgoing trunks between here and the New York Tel offices in Albany, Plattsburgh, and the AT&T office. If we have trouble with the trunk, we can actually dial up the trunk and do testing with New York Tel or AT&T.
Okay. Now,
This also incorporates one shelf that is used for testing all the local lines. We test them 2 nights a week. We have similar equipment in Moores and Rouse's Point to test those lines. Then in the next morning we'll get a printout that shows any failures or any faults on the lines so that we can, in most cases, correct the problem before the subscriber even knows it exists.
okay, I'm going to call my sister in Texas. How does it leave... I'm going to dial it, right? Now, how does my dial information, my tone, whatever, leave Champlain to get to Texas?
There's what we call T1 lines between Champlain and the AT&T office in Albany. Each of those T1 lines has 24 channels on it, which equates to a trunk between us and the Albany office. Once all the digits are received here, it translates the call and sends it out over that one channel of the 24 on each of those T1 lines to the Albany office through what we call multi-frequency signaling. And that records the same information in Albany that you dialed here.
Okay, let me get back to that in a second. That noise I hope it isn't bothering too many people. I want to just see back here, there's an awful lot of printouts from your computer. Is this a result of calls that have been made?
Now, these are the data listings of the actual program that the telephone system works on.
So you use this when you're repairing something or looking to see how it works?
If we have software errors printed out for any reason and the maintenance printout isn't sufficient to find out what the problem was, then we can go to the listings and locate the problem.
How many people do you have that are directly knowledgeable in this equipment like you are, say?
We have 3 technicians that work on it.
3 technicians that work on it.
Yeah. Arnie,
Okay.
Stan, and Brian.
Okay, Brian is...
Brian Hinkle is,
Okay.
he's off today.
Okay, and Stan Bombard we saw over here, and Arnie Beal we saw on the other side. Okay, we'll leave, and let's not forget to turn our air conditioner back on as we leave this room. We're upstairs in the telephone office now, and this was the living quarters for the sisters when they were here. They had their washroom up here for their washer dryer. They had their ironing up here, and they had individual rooms that the sisters had. We had maybe 12 to 20 sisters at that time, and some of the rooms, I believe, have been made it from 2 into one now to make a bigger room. They had small rooms up here, and this has all been done. This is a beautiful facility for our telephone company. We're going to walk down the hall. We see Dave at the far end, continuing his daily surveillance, making sure everything's going all right here in the telephone company. And he's smiling too, so I must have said something all right that time. Okay, we're going to walk down the hall. We're going to talk to, at least see where the operators are functioning. This is a room that has not been changed at all as far as its physical size. It's about 7.5 to 8 by 12, and one sister had this for her facility. There was a bed in here, and there was a big unit that had a closet, a desk, and some drawers that was on the wall. They each had a window, and this is the same size. It's a small office now. It's been very well painted. I don't think she had those colors when they were here. I think they were all this color before, and this is one of the rooms. And they've taken the walls out in some cases and making them twice as large. We're in one of the expanded rooms now. You'll notice that there are 2 windows when we get around there later. For instance, there's the window here, and there's another window here. There was a wall through here. And this nice big room is now the home away from home from Mrs. Anna Troll. And your title, Anna?
Accounting manager.
Accounting manager. So if you get your bill, you don't like how much you're paying, this is the lady that's sending you your...
Downstairs.
Downstairs. You didn't do it. Nothing to do with that, right? You're accounting
Right.
for the company and their receivables in total and their bills that they have to pay, correct?
Right.
How long have you been with the company, Anna?
Quite a few years.
Quite a few years. And Anna is a native of Champlain, New York, former Filion, correct?
Right.
Anna Filion. And a lot of relatives and brothers in the area. And very adequate. There's one of the units I was telling you about that was in the other room. A closet and some drawers. I guess there wasn't a desk. And 2 little up above. And there's the 2 doors that were 2 rooms before. Makes a very nice...
Yes. Very
Previously, when you had a office over in the building on Pine Street, I think your office was much bigger than this, but it wasn't what you'd call homey. This is
Right.
homey. Very, very nice, Anna. And what can you tell us that we'd be interested in with the telephone company? For example, what is your, when you talk about accounting, tell us, you have a computer. Do you have access to everything at the telephone company with that, or just the accounting in this particular...
No, just accounting.
So this is a
payroll.
personal computer here. This doesn't main into the mainframe at all.
No.
Okay.
No. We do payroll and payables.
Okay.
And general ledger, all of those functions.
Okay, payroll. How many do you have on the payroll?
We have 43.
I didn't realize you had that many. 43 people, and most of them are from the Tri-City area, Champlain, Rouse's Point, Moores, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's a very nice place to come to work. I imagine that
It is.
most of the time you're glad to leave home to come to
Yes.
work, right? And you live on, she lives on South Street, right directly across from my son. And it's a very nice little community here in Champlain, and we're glad to have the telephone company and making available to us you and all the other people who are helping us out in this little tour. And I thank you very much, and
You're
I'm
welcome.
sure you're glad to be on television.
Sure.
Don't forget to watch us on Channel 21.
Okay.
Thank you. To give ladies equal rights, we have Mrs. Elsie Carlson Mayo right here. the husband, the wife of that Gerald Mayo that's on all the time when they were going to give her equal time. This is the voice you've heard for years on our phone. Now there's the face that goes with it. And the person that goes with it, and I'm embarrassing her, and I don't mean to do that. Good morning, Elsie.
Good morning.
Good morning. What does a chief operator do?
Well, she's in charge of the operators. She schedules them, she does payroll, and she has other functions as well. She takes care of daily reports, monthly reports, and different reports that the other officials of the company need to do their own reports. And she works on directory also every year.
Okay. Do you also back up these ladies if one leaves the room, or
Oh,
is not?
yes.
Because I know I get you on the phone once in a while. I
That's
recognize
right.
your homey voice over the years that we have talked. But mainly, most of your hours are spent at this desk or in this
yes.
room as chief
Right.
operator. And your daughter at Transborder, we see her. She's got an office down there, and she's got her office stacked with papers also. Tell us what's going on in the other room. Now there are 3 operators at this time in there. Can you tell us who's in there right this morning?
Yes, the first operator is Betty Bayshard. The center operator is Mona Langto, and the other operator is Mary Clark. They are answering calls that are coming to them, like if you were at a business phone or at a coin phone and you needed an operator, you would dial 0 plus whatever kind of a call you would want. Like if you wanted a credit card, you dial 0 plus the number of the called party, and then you would wait for the tone and you would insert your credit card. These operators are trained to handle all types of calls, and on the spur of the moment, they have a lot of information that through the years that they have learned to handle these different calls. And a good operator, it takes about 5 years for them to be.
Unlike the telephone equipment downstairs, we don't have electric here, and we just had a battery change, and we had to interrupt that, Elsie. But you were just telling me that 5 years, right, before you
Yes,
become a
right.
real good operator. And how many operators do you have in total?
We have 12.
You have
And,
12.
Yes, that cover a 24-hour period.
Now, do you always have 3 operators?
We have 3 from 9 o'clock until 10 o'clock at night. We have 2 until 11, then we have 1 all night.
Okay. Now, there's a 4th one. That's in case one problem.
No, the 4th one is our 911 board.
Okay, 911. What? When I dial 911, what happens? You mean something will happen at that computer, and they leave where they are to come over?
Yes,
Okay,
right.
explain it to me.
We have an alarm that signals the operator that a 911 is coming into the board. She answers it immediately, and it depends on where they're calling from. If they're calling from the Morris or Altona area, she dispatches them to Plattsburgh immediately. If they call from Ross's Point, we dial the Ross's Point emergency number, and they take care of the trouble or the emergency. If it's from Champlain, we take down the information, and then we have a red phone that's on the other side of the room that the operators press a button for so many seconds, and then they have to announce over it to the fireman what type of emergency is, the location, the name of the people that need the fireman. And we also have a black phone on the other side, which comes directly to us from mutual aid. Anytime that they need assistance from our fire department, we notify the fire department for them.
All right, let me ask you now. I assume that there's a pad there that will have spaces they got to fill out, right?
Yeah, right.
What are some of the questions that when a person calls 111 and they're very excited and they've got to answer this information so they'll know, what are some of the questions? Do you remember the questions that you would ask, like the name
Yeah.
location. They
Right.
want the address exactly as much as possible, obviously.
Right. Mhm.
Telephone number.
That's right.
Is it a boy, a girl, a child, a grown-up,
Right,
an elderly
right.
person?
Mhm.
What other type of information would you ask them?
Well, we ask them as much of information as we can, but we try to pass the call on to the fire department that's concerned as soon as possible, because sometimes a second or even a minute is critical.
Okay, now the other night, I wanted to call the fire station to tell them that they were going to have the program on about the firemen on Sunday night. And Friday night, I looked for a phone number for the fire department. I couldn't find one. I would have had to call 911, and I hated to call 911 just to get their telephone to talk about a personal thing. Would that have been appropriate for me? I hate to, you people are busy. But how else can I reach the fire department? It's unlisted? It's unlisted number?
They have it that way because there's not always someone there.
Okay, and they don't want,
that's-
okay, all right.
that's why
I
it's,
understand. Otherwise, be looking it up
published.
and you'd be calling number and you're losing valuable time.
Right.
I got you. Now, I hear someone mention when we were changing batteries that this is going to change somewhat, going to be going to Plattsburgh more in the future.
Maybe JR, you would.
JR, can you tell me about that?
There are right now in the works transferring all 911 calls from Morris, Champlain, Rouse's Point to the center in Plattsburgh for handling of the calls. That's in the works with New York Tel right now. They're waiting for some software. As soon as that is in and tested, it will be transferred to Plattsburgh.
Now, let me get back to Elsie again here. Let me just look at this little, we're going to just put this right here. Look at this, right there, see? Okay. We got to have this as homey as possible. All right. I call and I asked, I want a number for a new party in town named John Bachelor.
Yes.
I don't have him in the book. What happens? I will get one of the, let's say I get Betty on the phone.
We have
Okay.
this here.
This is what a screen would look like.
Right.
And I would say I want to reach. Let's say Bob Venn. I want to call Bob Venn. What's his number, please? You would type in the name Venn,
Yeah, here's your
and you get
number right here.
Robert and Thomas. So you would say Robert, and then there's my number right there, correct? And it doesn't give my address. I noticed. That means that you don't have my address.
Right. Well,
Okay.
Some people they do not like to have the address.
Okay.
listed.
I look in the phone book for addresses many times, and an awful lot of them don't have it. It's the only reference we have for that. We don't have a directory, a regular village directory. And then we have the names here. There's a name that I recognize, Robert Vians. Have I got a lot of calls from that man? And he's a Moore's number.
Yes, that's
And they've called me at least 8 or 10 times looking for Robert, and I tell them, no, it's not me. And I didn't realize until recently that there was another person with my first name and very similar last name.
Yeah.
And this tells me a lot of information, and then I also understand that you can push another button and tell anybody exactly what kind of service I have at home.
Right. Let me see. See, well, it's not as like it is downstairs.
Okay,
I think
downstairs they have that?
I
Okay,
think would
they can
have,
do something, a different type of
But
operation.
here's something else we have. Like if you would call in and say that you would like to know the area code for a city.
Yes, okay.
Like say San Francisco, California. No, I got San Diego.
San Diego, that time.
Okay, but that's the way it goes.
Okay, we'll come right up and give you all the areas. Now, let me ask you this. Suppose I called for Bob Venn and I said, can you tell me where he lives? Would you give him my address
No,
if you had it on the screen?
no,
You wouldn't
no,
do that?
no, we
Okay.
don't give
You
out
wouldn't do that,
addresses
okay.
there.
And you wouldn't answer too many inquiring type questions, just my number. That's what you're entitled to give. Well, Elsie, thank you. Go ahead.
There's something else we have for, when you're at a coin phone.
Yes.
And you have, you want to know the price of your call? Okay, then we'll say to Plattsburgh, we'll say for 1 minute. From a coin phone, it's 75 cents for the first minute, 12 for each additional, and 40 cents for 3 minutes. And it tells you the operator code, the coin boxes, but we have other coin boxes in the 9s. And it tells the routing, what route it's in.
Right.
the Plattsburgh Exchange and
and where
area
it's from,
code and
yeah.
that, and the time.
Okay,
the
I just happen to have 75 cents in my pocket, so I make the call, and you say, your time is up, please deposit another 40 cents for 3
Right.
minutes. I said,
No, we don't do that. After it comes back the first minute, we'll say you're on overtime. When you come back at 4 minutes, that's when you deposit the 40
okay,
cents.
I don't have 40 cents, ma'am, operator, I don't have 40 cents. I don't have any change at all. Can
Well-
you wait till I go across the street or something?
Oh, yes, we do
What
that
if I don't come
sometimes.
back?
Well, then we have to mark it as a shortage.
And you also
We
know who I
haven't-
called, right? And you could probably find out
Oh,
who I
yeah,
was,
yeah,
correct?
if
Okay.
they want to accept the overtime.
I don't mean to be advocating this, but I
No,
know
no.
it's happened,
No,
you know?
no,
I don't
yes.
always have the right change when we do something like that.
Or sometimes they bill it to a credit card or a home number, you know, a different
Okay.
number.
Well, thank you very much, Elsie. You have another 5 minutes or so to catch up with Gerald in total time for this week, and we'll get that another time.
Okay.
Thank you
well,
very
thank
much.
you
You've
very
been very
much.
kind. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Elsie Mayo, Chief Operator. All right. We have the two people here, JR and Elsie, on a telephone, and I don't know what they're doing, but they're going to explain what they're doing.
Well, Steve, this is the number that he was calling from.
Yeah.
This is the number that he dialed to. Any calls that come into us are shown on our screen.
Now-
So we know exactly where they're coming from.
What do you mean from us? You mean in this office here?
No, from anywhere in the area.
But they have to be calling one of these two phones?
No.
Any phone. How would you
any
know-
phone.
Well, I don't see. Well, suppose someone is calling right now from Champlain to Rogers Point. I don't see it on the screen. What does that mean?
This is only toll calls.
Oh, just when you call operator. You want to know something. Okay. All right, just for the operator.
This is an O-plus call to the 312 area code. The
Okay.
calling number, the CG, is who makes the call. The CD is the number that's called. The other information displays the type of call and different classifications on the call so that the operator can recognize all information required to handle the call at a glance.
Okay.
See, this is an operator's board. It tells the different functions of, this is all the billing.
Mm-hmm.
This is the functional and the command keys. So, for our credit cards, if we would have a credit card there, we would go to verify credit card, we would get a tone, then we send special and it tells us if the credit card is valid or not.
And this is only in this room. That's not in the.
No.
This is identical to
They got one in there also.
Right,
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
the same kind
Elsie,
of
were
one.
you here at all when they used to have the old plug-ins? Were you
Oh,
involved in
yes,
that,
that-
right?
that's
And at that
correct.
time, you had like a quarter-inch plug that when I called, you take my and plug it into the area I'm calling to, right?
Yeah, right. And we used to have clips on the cord, so because sometimes we handled as many as 8 calls at a time. I mean, not you know, during our work period at a time. And to keep from disconnecting the wrong people, we'd had clips
Mhm.
that we would put on.
The same color or something like that? Did you?
No.
How would
I
you-
mean, the cords were the same.
Oh, 1 and
color.
1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 like
Right,
that? Okay.
right.
Things have changed a lot.
Oh, they sure have.
All right.
Yes.
Thanks again, Elsie, very much. We
you're
appreciate seeing what
welcome.
you have in here.
Well, thanks for coming.
Right?
Okay.
We're upstairs in the southwest corner of the building, and this is Dave's office. And we're trying to hold up a show of the various telephone companies in the state of New York. And the ones, Dave, in color, what do they mean?
All the ones that are in color are independent of the Bell companies. There are 45 in the state, and they range from one of the largest in the country, Rochester Tel, this area here, and they also own Osable, Keysville,
Up here.
and up in Paul Smith's. It's interesting that the extreme southwest corner of the state is an independent telephone company, and the extreme northeast corner of
Right.
the state is, so we in effect cover everything except Long Island.
Okay, up here there's Champlain and, of course, the Shazy, which is
Right.
now part of the Westport, right?
That's right. Chazy and Westport are
Westport.
together. Right.
Okay, and then Westport is down here, and then Crown Point is also
Crown
part
Point is
of
part
that.
of it,
And
right.
all the white belongs to New York?
All of White is served by New York Telephone
Okay,
Company.
and
Right.
so that, now, I showed you this map to indicate that all these independent companies in the state of New York have an association,
That's right.
right? And Dave's been a member of that association for a great number of years, but you've been a director since 1971.
Right, and this is my last year as director, and I was also the president of this organization.
Yes,
for
I
2
had
years.
records that showed 76 to 78.
That's
I got a file home on the on the Champlain Telephone Company, and Dave Southwick, don't you forget. And you director of the National Organization of Small Telephone Companies?
Yes, I was for 6 years. I was a national director of a small independent telephone company, smaller than the larger holding companies of our size.
It's a great honor, I think, that have the little Champlain Telephone Company, in contrast to the area the others are covering, having someone president of that, Dave, and I congratulated you then, and I congratulate you now, and it speaks well for all of us. Dave was also the mayor of the village of Champlain for 4 years?
4 years.
4 years,
Right.
and village trustee at least twice?
Yeah, twice.
Twice?
Right.
And was a fireman for over 20 years. Are you still a fireman?
No,
You're out of that now?
Retired from that too.
Okay, you see, as we get older, folks, this is what happens, you know. Calvin had an interesting question earlier, and I think I should bring it up. The question was, I can look in my phone book and I can find Elizabethtown, talk to Bottle Levine. I can find Wilmington, but I can't find the number for the Candlelight just outside of Moore's Forks.
Right.
What's the story on that, Dave?
We share a telephone directory with New York Telephone Company. The white pages, except for those that we serve, the Champlain, Moores, and Rouse's Point, are furnished to us by New York Tel, and that's their decision. The Ellenberg white pages, the Ellenberg directory is incorporated with the Malone directory, and we are not a part of that.
Okay. Now, another thing, talking about telephone, Marshall Maynard down in the Shazy Landing and I are working on this reunion that you're going to be attending in July, and he tells me to give him all the numbers from Plattsburgh because he can call there at no charge, and I got to pay to get down there, which is good for you, but on the other hand, how come he can call, and Ellenberg can call Plattsburgh at no charge?
All right.
What's this deal there?
It is called Extended Area Service, and it's mandated by the state of New York under the Public Service Commission law. We poll our toll users every year, and if we hit a certain plateau of number of calls from Champlain, for instance, to Plattsburgh, then we have to initiate a EAS study. And that study involves how much it would cost us to furnish that service, what we would lose in toll revenues. We put that all through a formula, and then we come up with a basic rate that it would cost the customers in Champlain, for instance, to have free service to Plattsburgh. That is toll-free service.
Yeah.
There is no such
course
thing as free service.
You would raise my monthly charge, right?
Your flat rate monthly charge would be raised by a certain amount determined by the formula. The calling rate between Champlain and Plattsburgh has not reached that plateau. It may someday, it probably will. As a matter of fact, it has between Moores and Ellenberg, and as of early summer or middle summer, the people in Moores will be able to call Ellenberg toll-free. And they will experience a slight increase in their local service.
That's a 236 number you're talking. Anybody with a 236?
Anybody with 236.
Dave,
right.
would you say that, and I don't know this, I'm just asking, would you say that your equipment in this telephone company is state-of-the-art? You're right,
Yes.
You can't get much more improvement?
No. Having said that, tomorrow something else will
I
come
realize
up.
that.
We have just finished a complete renovation of the Champlain office. The Moores and Rouse's Point offices were done in the past year. I'm sure JR explained to you that the Moores and Rouse's Point offices are actually run by the Champlain office. They are remote from the Champlain office, and the real brains of the switches are here in Champlain. And when we talk about upgrading the Champlain office, we're also upgrading the Moores and the Rouse's Point offices.
Right, you have buildings here. This is
Yes.
main office. You have your truck out on Ridge Road, the other facilities. You also have a building that with your mainframe in Rogers Point.
That's right.
One in Moores.
And one in Moores.
And one in Altona.
And one in Altona.
Okay. I understand over the past numerous years, here 5, 6 years since Ma Bell was broken up, that I think that's what started it. You no longer install telephones in a new number?
That's
Is that
right.
correct?
We don't install phones.
You no longer. Now, if I have one, I can continue to rent it from you.
Yes.
But if I started new today, I couldn't rent a phone from you. Is that
That's right.
correct?
That's right.
So I'd buy my own, and then you only own the wires to the outside of the house?
Yes. Right.
Okay, and then there's a charge to bring that in, so that would be less than I'm paying, obviously, because you've got wires inside of my house.
Right.
And then I can also add phones in my house, extra.
Right.
But I should call you and let you know so that they're sort of compatible. Is that all right?
That's right.
Anything else you want to tell us about that?
Well, we do offer maintenance agreements that are similar to the way that we used to do business. We'll maintain phones for so much a month. We have some people that do that. We have to do it outside of the telephone company. We do it with a subsidiary that's called K&S Communications. That was mandated. We can't do it under the telephone company. So we actually are operating two companies here, Bob. We're operating the Champlain Telephone Company, which is the primary company. We furnish the dial tone. We switch all the local calls to AT&T or New York Tel or whatever other carrier happens to be available. And that when we do all the billing. K&S handles all of the subscriber equipment. We sell telephones, we sell PBXs, we sell key systems, and we maintain them. And that is completely separated from the telephone company. However, we do use the same people.
Okay.
And the subsidiary is billed by the telephone company for the labor that's used.
Okay. It's been pointed out to me, Dave, like from between here and Moore's, between here and Rogers Point, about every half mile to a mile, I'll see some white, like large insulators on the base of a telephone pole. Boosters or something like that. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Are you very familiar with that? I don't know if people notice, but I've noticed that outside. But as you drive along the road, look for every 20th pole or whatever, and see this either round or rectangular white. I guess they're plastic, not plastic, but they're ceramic, right, or whatever. Now, those are necessary in order to boost the signal?
They, yes. JR showed you downstairs, showed you a carrier room. They are part of that equipment, and they are outside of the central offices because they have to be, and they are. You're right. They're spaced very precisely at a certain distance, and they provide additional circuits between here and Rouse's Point, here and Moore's, and from Moore's to Altona.
Let me ask you a question that I've often wondered, and I think somebody else has. I'm calling on the phone. I call long distance, and the operator says, "Thanks for using AT&T."
Okay.
And I said, "Well, thanks a lot. I didn't know I did." What's that all about, Dave?
Okay. Part of the breakup of the Bell system involved the operators, and the AT&T at one time had all of the operators. Then the local Bell companies started to take back some of their operator services. And at that time, AT&T came to us and asked if we would be part of AT&T. We really didn't have much of a choice. However, we have a contract with AT&T to provide operator services for the people who are the subscribers of the Champlain Telephone Company. So in actuality, the people that are working as our operators are really working for AT&T.
Okay.
We get paid monthly. It's an annual contract that we sign, so that's the way it is.
I figured they'd probably get paid for each time they said it or something, and I said, they keep telling me that.
Bob, that's part of the
You know,
contract.
one time I think I asked her, I said, I don't think I know I had a choice. I really, but I guess I do.
Well, choices are coming.
They're coming.
It won't be long before there will be some choices. I can't tell you right now when it will be, but there will be plenty of publicity, and it should be within the next couple of years that there will be choices other than AT&T. There will be MCI, I'm sure, Sprint, some other names that people have maybe not as familiar with. Our equipment is capable of handling that, and we can do it.
To remind you, this is Bob Venn with our program, What's Going On Here, and we're talking to Dave Southwick, the president of the Champlain Telephone Company, who's very kind to let us come in and make a tour of the building. And I also want to mention that Dave is a one of the serious sponsors of Hometown Cable on Channel 21, and I and all people who watch this channel, thank you very much for that, Dave. It gives us a chance to see the local sports, the village meetings, the board meetings, the school programs such as this, and the graduations. We were in school yesterday, 2 days ago, and we're getting ready for the bazaar, and I know you've assisted down there in this new building. You've donated your truck to help do some things, and the parish and the whole community appreciate what you and all the telephone companies doing.
Well, we, as I mentioned before, Bob, one of the things that small telephone companies are very proud of is the fact that we are part of the community. We hire people within the community. Our payroll is almost 95% of our payroll, which is approaching $2 million a year.
$2 million, make sure that's pointed out.
Stays here in this community. Either Moore, Champlain, or Rouse's Point. All our people live here. We buy almost all our supplies from local vendors. If they don't have it, we buy it from Plattsburgh. We very seldom buy out of the area. We buy all our trucks locally. We have them serviced locally. We buy our gasoline. We like to be part of it. We realize that we are in a semi-monopoly position. We appreciate that, and we appreciate being part of this community, which is, as far as I'm concerned, one of the greatest communities in the country.
I know you're civic-minded, being on the board. I know you have, they've sent out notices with the telephone bills for the zoning commission. You assisted us with our alumni association, and other things that you've done that people don't always know about. And I thank the company. I wrote a note here to thank you, and I thank you again for that. And I thank you for all the others who don't take the time to thank you for some of the things you're doing. We'll take a short break. I want to look at this other wall over here.
That was at his desk in the other hall.
We're starting now on the kind of family section of the office, and Charlie Southwick, the dad of David and John at the top, and how well I knew Charlie when he used to come to our ball games in 1945 and 46, and a great follower of the basketball teams and baseball and the rest, and he was a great man. I loved your father, and he had such a tragic ending. And then, by the way, before we get right down here, here's another important person in this family, Barbara, wife Barbara, and I forgot to mention before, but I'm going to mention it now, Queen Barbara and King David. You remember how humble he looked with the crown on his head when Calvin got those pictures? It was a great honor, Dave, and you're blushing. I didn't mean to do that, but listen, it was great. It's a great thing, and I know how proud you were of it, and of Barbara. And of great family, the boys here. Let's go. Is this...
That's Peter.
Peter on the left.
David
in the center, and then Joe, who's here at the company on the right. Sarah, junior in high school here at NCCS, basketball player, plays baseball. Softball, rather. Soccer.
Right.
And up above, from last year's team, Nancy. She was one of the All-Stars, I believe, and on the team I remember reading. I didn't follow the girls as much. I did get out and do a few games for Calvin. With my voice, with Sam, and she's at college where now, Dave?
She's a sophomore at Ithaca.
Sophomore.
She will be a sophomore.
So will be a sophomore at Ithaca, right? Is she going to go into athletics?
No, more of physical training, physical therapy,
Okay.
and that's the type of thing. Her knees are not going to allow her to participate in collegiate athletics.
Okay. Now there's another too. I don't see the picture here.
Right there.
This here? This is Susan. All right, and that's the 6 children, 3 boys and 3 girls, and when you get 3 of each, you stop, right, when you get even.
One of the boys said they weren't even, that he had 3 sisters and only 2 brothers, and I said that was not, we weren't going to do anything about that.
Now that sounds like a Southwick talking if I ever figured out who's a mathematician here.
Right.
All right, and then some of the other things here, we have representing the old phone. Hey, Dave, how would you like to have back those old oak phones you had that you sold for $1 each back in the early 50s?
Boy.
Huh? And you couldn't get rid of them if you remember.
No, we junked a lot of
You
them.
junked a lot of them at $1 each. By the way, I wanted to mention I talked to Charlie Pitfido the night before last. I was in talking with a week ago, I guess, and I was mentioning we were going to keep coming up, and he said to say hello to everybody, and he misses Champlain.
Charlie did a lot of work for the Champlain Telephone Company. He was our backbone for a number of years.
You want to say hello to Charlie? Because I'll probably get a copy of this off to
Hi,
Charlie.
Enjoy your retirement.
Well, you know, they're coming out. They're on their way up now. They're going to be around the Ithaca area, I think, in that lower part of the state, Utica area.
Yeah.
They've got it rented again. And some other memorabilia of the years. There's the United States Independent Telephone Association. I guess that's what you were president, right? That's what it's called? that association. You were president. And there's an old-style telephone. Was here for years. And another, well, that's a replica, I believe. And that's about it here in the office. And Dave, we're standing with Dave Southwick here. And now, Dave, Calvin and I are not nosy. We're not.
No.
But we know there's some people out there who must wonder how you get elected. And if you get elected, who elects you?
The telephone company is run by a board of directors. The board of directors are appointed by the stockholders. There are approximately 25 stockholders, common stockholders of the company. The majority of the stock is owned by the Knapp family and the Southwick family. Mrs. Knapp and I, Mrs. Knapp is the largest stockholder. And, we sit down at a stockholders meeting once a year and we appoint directors. Fortunately, we've been able to appoint some people here that are part of the community and are well known, and people who you know. Edith is obviously, she's the executive vice president of the company. Myself as president. My brother John is the treasurer. Lawrence Paquette is the secretary. And the three other directors are Frank Goodrich Jr. from Moore's Forks, Kurt Kaufman from here in Champlain, and Paul Seymour from Moore. So we have a fairly good representation of the people that we serve here. We meet at least quarterly. The telephone company pays dividends. The direction of the company is vested with the board of directors. They, in a turn, elect the officers, and at the present, the officers are myself, as I said, and Edith is the executive vice president.
I don't know if you'd call me an investor or not, but when my father-in-law died, Bernard, he had some preferred shares that you pay interest on, and Teresa and I got them from my mother-in-law and paid her for them, and we have them at home, and we get a check, I guess, twice a year. Four times a year for $16.25.
He gets one 4 times a year, Teresa.
She sees to it says Robert or Teresa, so she don't always see them. They get them 4 times a year, and we've had those stocks and right along. And Dave, in closing with you, we're going to be doing some more talking to other people. Is there anything you want to cover? What's next for the Champlain Telephone Company? What's in the future?
Actually, we're running very hard right now, Bob, to keep up with the technology that's coming down, the moving of data. We do have some fairly large customers, which is kind of unusual for a small telephone company. We have, of course, Wyeth Arist, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country. We have F.W. Myers, who's one of the largest brokers, plus A.N. Derringer, and some of the other relatively large users of telecommunications, and we have our work cut out for us just keeping up with their telecommunications needs, and we're going to do it.
Dave, we did talk before we started an hour ago, whatever, and you've been in 3 locations with the telephone company. You want to reiterate where you have been, where you started?
We started in downtown Champlain, up over Margaret's Variety Store. We had the business offices up there, and the operators, the switchboard. And the operators in those days knew where everybody was because they were up on the 2nd floor in downtown Champlain and were very helpful in locating people. After one of the bad floods, we decided to better move up on the hill. So we moved the corner of Pine and Cedar Street. That building is still being used. We rent it. We still own it.
Can I change that to Spruce instead of Cedar?
Is that Spruce?
That's Spruce in the center. Center Street or Spruce Street.
Oh, okay.
Cedar's down behind
Okay.
the highway. Just so that someone's going to have a hard job to figure out where that corner is. Go ahead.
All right, and then in the early 80s, we moved over here. When we went to electronic switching, we made the move all in one time. And
Okay.
here we are.
And then you bought the facility outside.
Yes.
And Dave, if you think you're nervous, just think of poor little me looking up here at this 6'4" or whatever. And it's not quite as bad as when I was looking at Marcel Bonnebeau at the tournament. He was 7 feet, and I was talking to him, looking straight up like this. And Dave, again, I want to thank you. We're going to be talking to your son and then to Tom Chellis, I believe, right? And maybe we'll take a run out to the garage. It's going to be a long program, but it's something that's deserved. People are very glad. And how are you making out at this facility here? Is it what you thought it would be?
Oh, yes, we're doing very well here. We have had very, very few problems.
Terrific.
The building itself is sound and was well built, and we have no problems.
Very good.
Okay.
Right, from Champlain Telephone Company, we're taking a break. We're in the business office of the Champlain Telephone Company, continuing on our tour. And I've been told this is Tom Chellis, but I've never met Tom. Bob Venn.
I'm Tom Chellis.
Yes, and where are you from, Tom?
I'm from Champlain right now.
Yeah, and before?
Before I was in Vermont.
In Vermont. You're from Onder?
No, I'm in New Hampshire.
So you keep moving.
That's right.
You're following the telephone as they get newer. Okay, we're in the office, and what is your title and what is your job at the telephone company?
I'm the customer service manager, and my job involves maintenance of customer service, hopefully, and the computer systems and programs that run all of our systems.
Keeping us happy, in other words. If I got a complaint, I reach you?
We try.
You don't have many of those.
No,
of
nobody
course.
calls and complains.
Nobody calls and complains. They don't have as many as they used to, certainly.
That's correct.
The equipment here is first class, first rate.
Right.
The people are very nice. The ones we know more, so of course, are the ones we talk to on the phone.
Right.
You know, when you get an operator, and they're always very cordial on the phone, although we don't reach them as much as we did before. Even now, when you call collect, you dial, I guess, and then they'll ask you your name or something.
Right.
You don't really ask for your number at all.
You can do it as fast as you want.
Okay, so what does your job entail at the Champlain Telephone Company? We're in the office, by the way, where you come in and pay your bill is right around, if you'll, Calvin will pan right over, that's where you come in, and right behind there. That used to be the reception room out there, and we're sitting in what was formerly the chapel when the sisters had this building, and I don't know if there's any significance with Mr. Chellis being in this room because it was a chapel. Is that...
Well, I don't know. I was in Mother Superior's office when I first came here, then I moved out here.
All right. Okay, you moved
But
to the big
it
room.
is significant that our computer is on the old altar.
Okay. That's fine. Come right in. Well, we just had some more, and I just lost my seat. I'll pick up another one, or I'll just get right down here with Tom. Okay, Tom, so explain now, you have a computer on your desk. Well, how do you use that computer? What do you use that computer for? If I call for the complaint?
Right. If we have everything online on the computer now for the customers' bills. We have their master equipment file, which shows everything that they're being billed for, what their charging is. All of the records where we send the bills to, where they're physically located. We have copies of all the bills that we've mailed out to them are online on the system. So when a customer calls in, we don't have to go and grab a lot of paper, we just grab a keyboard.
Okay, and then behind is the billing? Is that where the billing is done on those computers?
Well, the whole department does billing. The computer is physically in there, and all the terminals in the building are tied to the same computer.
Mm-hmm. And there are 4 of you in here, right?
Right.
3 ladies and yourself.
4 staff people, right?
Right.
And it's our responsibility to just get the bills out monthly to handle applications for new service and changes to service and handle inquiries.
Do you ever have occasion as a service manager to go, not service, customer service, excuse me, to go to a person's residence?
No, I don't.
No, I mean, I wouldn't be so, it wouldn't be ever get so drastic that you got to come to my house because I'm that upset.
That's right.
Okay,
we
good.
can get you happy before that.
Long before that. All right, I brought, just out of a coincidence, I happen to have my latest telephone bill that I got.
Let's see if it's paid.
Yeah, it was paid. It's on its way. It was paid May the 1st, all right? I got it, I think, the 29th or 30th. It's paid. And my question is, first of all, it's very long. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the one I mailed, 7 separate sections.
That's a short bill.
That's what I was told when I mentioned it up front, and that's a short bill. And it's short from the top 3, which are my long-distance calls, right?
Right.
So most of anyone's bill is the long-distance calls,
That's
what you're
correct.
saying? Okay. And they can guide that themselves. I don't have any problem with that. But when we get down to, let's say, page 4, page 5, it says April bill was $47.83. I'm not ashamed of that. Payment and adjusted, and I paid the bill. Now it says my May service and equipment charges was $13.07. That's my basic charge.
That's correct.
What would that include?
Okay, that would include dial tone to your premises, and if you have any custom calling features or touch tone service, that would also be in there.
Okay, I have touch tone. That's an extra $2 or $3 a month, right?
$1.34.
$1.34. I also have the 30 number
Speed calling?
speed calling. and I may have something else. So that's all included in that charge.
Right. Now, if you called in with an inquiry on that, excuse me, from your bill,
Mhm.
we could tell you exactly what those
Okay,
charges were.
let's do that. I just call you and say, why am I paying you $13.07, Tom? My number is right here. Okay, there it is.
Okay. This is the total amount that we billed you
Yep,
on that bill.
1307.
And this is the detail of all the charges that make that
Okay.
up.
My access line for my channel,
Right.
my phone, it's a private line, is 579.
Right.
Everybody's is 579 in the village.
Right.
And then I got a 594.
That's for your speed calling.
Okay, I was thinking $6, 594, and $1.34 for the touch tone, a total of 1307.
That's right.
All right. Then the next one says FCC mandated. Sounds like a law. Interstate access charge of $3.50. Does everybody have that charge on their bill?
Many people do. It is a law. The FCC many years ago determined that customers should not be, the cost of getting service to the customer's premises should not be covered in toll rates. So as that charge has gone up each time, toll rates have gone down. They're trying to lay the burden of the cost of getting the service to the location to each location. For example, other people, if you made no toll calls before, you weren't contributing anything towards the expense of providing service to your
In
residents.
case I wanted it, right?
Right.
Okay. Now then, everybody has that.
That's
Basically
correct.
the same.
Right, it's
Okay.
$3.50
For
for each
everybody.
single line.
Okay. Total AT&T communications toll, 7.25. I guess that's my toll calls up above.
That's correct.
Relating to AT&T, and the total Champlain telephone toll is $10.57.
That's correct.
Does that mean when I make a long distance call to Texas to my sister, that part of it goes to AT&T and part of it stays in Champlain, divided up here?
If you dial on a 1+ basis, it would go to AT&T.
All of it goes to
That's
AT&T?
correct.
You don't get any part of my
We
long
don't
distance
get any
charge?
part of that long distance toll charge that we bill it.
We were talking with Dave earlier about maybe Shazy and Plattsburgh coming in as part of our basic charge in the future.
Right.
So you would lose no tolls at all because of my calling Plattsburgh now, because that's AT&T call.
No, Plattsburgh is New York Telephone and us.
Oh, you do.
Okay,
You do
AT&T is
separate.
outside
I
of the
beg your pardon.
518 area code.
Okay, so you do then would share that call. You each get some of that income of my call to Plattsburgh.
Within 518, yes.
Okay, you
Yes.
share that. Okay, so my total charge there is so. And then I got a New York State surcharge. Not a tax, a surcharge.
That's correct.
AT&T 3.4%, 80 cents.
Right.
And then I have a taxes federal and then state, $1.05 and $2.30. It's a total of $38.54, including it. Then a K&S Communications total charges. All I know about K&S, and I thought it was K, the letter N and S, but it's K&S,
Right.
is the wiring maybe in the house or something?
Inside wire maintenance is offered by a subsidiary. As David explained the
Okay.
K&S yet? Okay. And you have some telephones that you're leasing
I
for
have two
K&S
telephones.
Communications. And you subscribe to the wire maintenance plan.
Okay, so that breaks down my $5.79 I pay into another total down there. I
That's
see.
correct.
Okay.
Okay, and then on the equipment charges, there would be the taxes and the state and federal taxes on that also, which is
Okay.
itemized up above.
All right. Now, because I don't feel any better about paying it because I know what I'm doing now, but I do know what I'm doing, right? And we get an awful lot of service, obviously, from our telephone, and it's a very, it makes us feel safe when we need an emergency, and it makes it very good for people who are homebound, and my wife and I make a lot of, not as many as some people, there's only two of us. The other thing is, I understand, and I talked to Dave, and he said I could get this from you probably. In addition to the regular service, there are many, 6 or 7 different things that you can subscribe for and pay separately. One is Touchstone.
Okay.
And I can have the Touchstone phone instead of the, what's the other one called? The
Rotary dial.
rotary dial where you hit a click, 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 even on a Touchstone phone.
That's correct.
All right. And that's $1.
$1.34.
Okay. And secondly, I have speed calling. You can either get 10 numbers, I guess, or 20, or 40.
Get 8 or 30.
8 or 30, okay. And that,
It basically allows you to store numbers that you frequently call so that you can call them with dialing just 1 or 2 digits. Many of the phones today have speed call built into them, and it's a big benefit. The nice
Okay.
part is that the same speed call code works from every phone in your house rather than having
exactly,
to go to the phone
exactly.
that has it. Yeah.
So if you have a Champlain telephone or K&S phone in your house, you probably don't have the one that does it automatically. You'd have to subscribe to this
That's
service. And when I had it at first, we had 8 numbers, and it was a single number you dialed. 1, 2, 3, up to 9, I guess. But then we got into 30, and we have to have 2 numbers.
That's correct.
And I think we're only using like 26 of the 30. We just don't.
We don't
call it-
offer 26.
No, but the other 4 I'm donating. Okay. I've also heard of a thing called call waiting.
Right.
Could you explain what that is?
Call waiting is a feature that allows the customer to know that someone else is trying to reach them. For example, if you're on a call and somebody else dials your number, you'll get an alerting tone, and you can put the call you're on hold and talk to the call that's coming in. It's particularly useful if there are teenagers or children a lot in the house. It's very rude in business situations, or if you call someone, it can be very rude to have to put them on hold to keep answering your call. So we also offer now an enhanced call waiting, which means when you make your call, if you dial the 70 pound sign before making the call, no incoming call will override. They'll just get a regular busy.
So when you're making your call going out, you dial 70 first?
Right.
But if someone's calling you and you get the second call, you have no control over that.
You can have, if you have three-way calling, you can hook flash, get dial tone, and dial the code.
All right. Three-way calling means that I can talk to 2 different stations at the same time?
That's correct.
Okay,
You can
now-
have 3 people talking at once.
Okay, what? That happens in my house a lot.
Well,
3 people
hopefully
talking.
different locations.
All right, tell me this. What's the charge, say, on a three-way call
Three-way call. Who knows?
per month?
Okay, three-way calling is $298 per month.
Per month. And
And-
is there any installation charge for something
There's
like
a
that?
one-time installation charge of $8.25 right now.
Okay. So if you're interested in something like this, you can call Tom, call the customer service line and get information. What about the speed calling? 8 numbers,
Okay, 8 numbers is also $298,
$298, and 30 numbers,
$594.
$594 is what I'm paying. Call waiting,
Call waiting is, I'm referring to my cheat list here,
okay,
$298 also.
$298. What else do you offer? Is there anything else you can offer that would be special to people?
I think that one thing that people should be very aware of is that in today's competitive world of toll rates, you see all the commercials for MCI, Sprint, RCI, many different carriers. We have access to every one of them. It's the customer's responsibility to contact that carrier and find out how to set up with a specific carrier other than AT&T. We also offer most of the AT&T calling plans that they see advertised. And again, we can help you go through the accounts and see if it's something that you could save on, maybe by changing a calling pattern or just calling as you usually do. We do have online files of everybody on every toll plan.
Okay, I came in and talked with someone one time. I talked with someone in here about, I talked about this, oh, and there's another one, dial-a-visit. Dial-a-visit. Could you explain dial-a-visit to us?
Get my cheat sheet again.
Okay. Computers are a great thing, and it's right at your fingertips, and as a result, because it's at your fingertips, you don't try to memorize it. You don't try to keep it in your mind because it's so accessible.
You give up.
You give up.
Okay. Dial-a-Visit is a toll discount plan in the 518 area code. And it's residential customers only can have it. It's a 40% discount during the night and weekend and evening rate periods. So after 5, basically weekdays, all day Saturday and Sunday. It's a bulk billed plan, which means if you're on a one-party line, you don't need a listing of the numbers you dialed. So there's some savings there. It is available if you want to order it for $1.44 a month. If you're making over $1.98 of calls within 518, it's probably going to save you money.
Okay, so what they're saying here, let's take on my bill this particular month, for instance. We called in that 518 area $5.98 worth of calls, 13 calls, and my bill for that was $3.58. So I saved 40%. Now, I didn't save 40% because I get this extra charge because I want to see what my calls are. Not that I don't trust the telephone company. I just like to know where the calls are going. I have a record keeping on it, curiosity, and more than that, really. I pay $1.44. So it actually cost me this month $5.12 for $5.98 worth of calls. If we called $15.98, I still would have been only $1.44 to list them, and they're all identified on here by the letter D, and it has to be after 5 o'clock. So sometimes we won't call somebody at 4:45. We'll wait till 5 o'clock and not only get the low rate, but we get the additional 40% off the low rate, or till 6, after 6, whatever. We've had that for years, and we found it very satisfactory. We've had very little problems with our billing. As many times as I check, I don't very often find a mistake, believe me. talking about mistakes, sometimes we make a mistake ourselves when we're dialing out. I mentioned this earlier, and you can tell me here that if I find I dialed the wrong number by one digit and someone says you got the wrong number, I can tell the operator and she will have it removed. She'll give me a credit for that, and that's very important. If you feel that you made a mistake, you don't have to pay for your mistake. The telephone company pays for your mistake, correct? Let me ask you in general, here not about any particular, but in general, you have problems with your receivables? I mean, there are a lot of receivables past due?
We have guidelines with the Public Service Commission that tell us how we can treat past due accounts. We currently do not charge a finance charge on them, but anything over 30 days old does receive a disconnect automatically.
You can disconnect automatically?
Yes, we can.
Elderly people, anybody?
Well, I'll go into that in
I
a
don't
second,
mean that
but-
you won't, but I mean you can.
Well, after 30 days, we can send a notice for
Okay.
20 days disconnection. At that point, the customer can contact us and negotiate a deferred payment agreement if they're qualified under the guidelines, again, of the commission. If they're elderly, handicapped, whatever, we've sent out inserts to try to identify these people, because then we will definitely reach them before we would take action to disconnect the phone. They're flagged on the account and they come up as being a senior citizen or a medical requirement for the telephone. It still doesn't mean they don't have to pay the bill, but it means we will contact them personally.
I think I've read somewhere, Tom, that if there is somebody who's elderly, you must tell other than just that one individual. You must tell someone that's like a relative of that person so that they'll know, because these older people sometimes don't realize.
No, that's not a requirement.
It's not a requirement.
We offer third-party notification.
You do, okay.
But the customer has to ask us to notify someone else. And again, the person we notify is not responsible for the bill, but they do get duplicate notifications.
Is this office also the collection department? Do you make the calls and say you're past due, we'd like to get our money?
Yes,
And
we
so
attempt to contact each customer each month if they get a notice.
you're responsible for that also,
right.
correct? Okay. Is there anything else that you offer that I haven't mentioned in any of these additional services that you have?
Well, we offer the statewide hearing relay service, which is a capability for someone to call someone who is hearing and speech capable to call someone else who is hearing or speech impaired with a teletype device. So that you as a business person, if you wanted to contact a person who doesn't hear, you can call the telephone number, the 800 number, and an operator will intervene and actually listen to what you say and type it to the person you're talking to transparently, and then give the response back.
Okay. Now, who should I be asking the question of crank calls?
Okay.
Can I ask you that information?
You can try.
All right. Let's suppose,
I don't make many.
Let's suppose someone around is making crank calls and some obscene phone calls. There's a procedure you can make. What would if my wife or my daughter were getting these, or myself getting these obscene phone calls, and I want to stop it? So I don't want to see Dave in the street, so I'd call this office and say I got a problem.
Right. We would refer you to the state police, and you would have to fill out a formal complaint with them. Then they have the forms to send to us to put the traces on.
So it goes through the state police and then to you?
That's correct.
Okay. And then there's a tracer put on or whatever
That's correct.
the case warrants, right? Have you any idea how many subscribers you have in your total system?
Approximately 4,500.
4,500. And talking about the number, there are about 2,400 and going to be 2,900 who are possibly watching this program. There's that many subscribers to new channels and who watch Hometown Cable. I want to remind you that we're in the Champlain Telephone Company with Tom Chellis, the customer service manager, and Bob Van here with our program called What's Going On Here. And what is going on here is a lot of service to the community. And we'll take a sharp break and get right back to you. Oh, we're still talking with Tom Chellis in his desk here in the customer service department. And on the screen is my bill for the past year, for 1989, right? Is that right,
That's
Tom?
correct, for a dial-a-visit.
Dial-a-visit. And this showed that it cost, I saved the last year by using dial-a-visit at my number. You can show them, right, $54, and it shows each month how much I saved because of it. Now, if you don't want your calls broken down, that's what I would have saved. But because I wanted them broken down and know how long we talk to each person, it cost me an additional $144 a month times 12, or roughly $18. So I really saved about $36. But it's $3 a month I'm just throwing out the window if I didn't have this, and it could go, if it were it could be 3 times that much if we talked that if you had children at college, anybody in the 518
That's correct.
number. Now, isn't there also one you can get for the whole state?
You can get an AT&T calling plan that covers outside of 518, but within New York State. It's
You know the charge on that? Because I don't make enough call, we decided we wouldn't do that. At one time, it covered the whole thing.
right. The AT&T cross-state plan is $4.25 a month minimum.
Okay, but that, and then you pay that whether you use it or not.
That's correct.
And once you go over $7 worth of call, you're starting to make money, and from then on, you save 40%.
No, you save 10%. It's only a 10% discount.
The difference between Champlain Telephone Company and AT&T is the amount of they let you save. See, they let you save 40%. AT&T let you save 10%.
But AT&T has some plans that include the state as well as their interstate callings.
Now we're getting real complicated. Let's just check out Calvin. I told Calvin he should get into this, and we'll put Calvin's number in the machine and see how much he'd have saved last year had he subscribed to this.
Gee, Calvin, we can solve this. You need to make more calls. It would have cost you $17.83 more.
More. Calvin would have lost $1.50 a month had he subscribed to this service because he doesn't make a lot of long distance calls in the 518 area after 5 at night. And if he wanted to break down, he'd have lost an additional $18. And Calvin don't like to lose money. And even the camera is shaking no. You notice that. Okay, we're going to close off this segment of the Hometown Cable's coverage of the Champlain Telephone Company on Tuesday, the 15th of May. It has been all day long. And we want to thank Tom for his portion of this coverage, Tom. It was nice meeting you. And we hope you're living in Rogers Point? I know.
No, I live in Champlain.
Where do you live in Champlain?
Over on Eden Lane.
Oh, he's in the new development back here. Okay.
The new old development.
The new old development, right directly behind. Well, it's part of the property that we owned when we owned this as a convent. That whole field belonged to.
Oh, really?
It belonged to St. Mary's, and we sold that to the Ash Line, and then they started putting locks back there. Absolutely, that was all part of this property that you're on right now. And we want to welcome you to the community a year or two, or how long have you been here?
This is my 7th year.
Well, 7 years late. We just don't travel in the same circles. But you'll see us on, anybody out there was wondering who this person is when he's in the Grand Union, the post office, that's Tom Chellis. And he's the customer service manager at Champlain Telephone Company. And thank you very much for watching Hometown Cable. Tell your friends about it. It's on every day, 8 o'clock at night, after you're watching the 5 o'clock show. Also 1 a.m. in the morning. We're going to go see Joe before we leave the building. That's Joe Southwick. I have directions from my director right behind the camera. That's Calvin Castine. You usually hear his voice. Don't forget, 5 p.m., 8 p.m., 1 a.m. if you're a night hawk, and 9 the following morning. 4 times this show will be shown. We're still at the Champlain Telephone Company. We found another Southwick. We're going to talk to Joe Southwick, the assistant general manager, or general manager?
That's correct.
Assistant general manager?
That's correct.
Correct. And you're in charge of what, any particular portion of the company?
Yeah, mainly the outside plant, the cables and poles and all the installers and the line crew. And
Okay, so when you say plant, you mean poles, anything that you own out there. The 3 buildings in Moores, Altona, Rogers Point, that's part of the outside plant?
Yes, it is.
Okay. But first of all, before we get into that, with the 3 boys, where do you fall in line?
My brothers? I'm the youngest.
You're the youngest.
Yes.
We're talking to the baby of the 3 Southwick boys, and that'll bring a smile. But he's also a giant with the Chamber of Commerce, the Northern Tier Chamber of Commerce, Rogers Point, Champlain, Shazy, is that in the name?
The town of Shazy and Moores are also.
Okay, and he's the president. You've been president for how long?
1 year.
1 year. Done an excellent job this year with your festival,
Winter
right?
Carnival went
Winter
real
Carnival
well.
went very well, correct? Yep. And okay, let's see what we can. I don't know as much about this portion as I do when I'm looking at inside. But now, when you're talking about poles, how often do you have to replace a pole, unless someone hits it with a car?
The poles that we install today are good for 20 to 25 years.
Okay. And how high are they normally? Are they different heights?
Yeah, they're all different heights. A lot of the jobs that we do are done in coordination with New York State Electric and Gas. You notice a lot of the poles that are out there have both power wires and telephone wires on them. And in a case like that, what we do is the power company and the telephone company get together and we split the cost of a pole. And most of those now, the power company requires 45-foot poles.
Okay. Now, when you say split, you don't necessarily mean 50-50.
Not
It could be a different
necessarily.
thing. Okay.
We work out different deals.
All right, but I also have seen, Joe, on those poles in front of my house, cable wires for new channels.
Cable TV, yeah.
Yes. Now, do you give them permission to put that on your pole?
Yeah, they send what we call joint pole cases. They send a request to attach to a pole, and depending on who owns the pole, that determines where they send the request to. And if it's a wholly owned pole owned by the power company, then they send it to the power company, and they pay the power company a rental attachment, is what it's called.
Okay, we'll take a break for that sound in the back is one of the Champlain Telephone Company. Listen to it. We're back on again, and how appropriate that the Champlain Telephone Company employees get telephone calls while we're making our conversation. I'm not going to tell you who called, but I will tell you it was not George Bush. Okay, that's all I'm going to tell you for sure. Okay, getting back to the cable line. They have their wires on your pole, or they pay you for this?
Yeah, they find it more economical to pay a annual rental an attachment rental fee rather than go out and do their own construction.
Now, suppose you say, no, you can't use our pole. Does that mean a cable company could not have cable TV unless they put up their own poles?
Essentially, that's
Don't happen very often.
not. It hasn't happened at all in our serving area, but
Okay.
there are signs of it in other places.
There are, huh? Okay. Now, behind this tree here, behind Joe, we see a map, and I believe you can point out for us here, Joe, the area covered by the Champlain Telephone Company.
Sure.
This is the town of Moore's line, I think, right here. Go ahead here, and then show you. This is the town of Champlain over here, and you can show us where the coverage is.
Well, as far
And
as
it's not a straight line.
No, as far as the town line goes, I'm not so sure that they are all that well defined on the map.
Okay.
The corners that are designated by the A, B, and C show the actual. There are actually only 3 corners to this, if you will, because of the international boundary.
Right.
Between A and B, this is out near Cannon's Corners, actually northwest of Cannon's Corners, down to B, which is right at Crowley's Corners, the intersection of Devil's Den Road and the Military Turnpike. Everything to the west of there is New York Telephone with the Ellenberg Depot Exchange. Between point B and point C, which is out there in the middle of the
Here?
lake, behind
Yep.
behind the tree,
Yes.
between those points, all south of that is Shazy Westport Telephone Company. Okay, and they have, I believe, 2 different exchanges in here. They have their West Shazy and Scioto exchange, and also the Shazy exchange down below.
Very appropriate. It's very unusual marking right here, and it's not because of. I wish I could pronounce the Indian reservation there, but
Yeah.
this is
Ganyanka.
Ganyanka. This is the minor lake where the reservation is right around this whole point. And I don't know whether they have phones or not, but that's part of the Shazy. The minor lake is part of the Shazy, and you got this very pronounced point and goes around. And I think Tom was telling us you have about 4,000 subscribers in your area?
Between 4,000 and 5,000.
Between 4,000 and 5,000. And you have your this is the village limit that you've drawn around here, I take it?
Well, they're what we call base rate areas. That's actually a little bit bigger than the village.
Oh, that's your own drawing, okay.
Right, that's a little bit bigger than the village limits, but every person that's inside it, any person that or business that's inside of that area is was what we call a base rate. They don't pay any mileage for service outside
So,
the area.
about all this area right here is all 236 number.
Yeah, exactly. Everything to the west
To
of
this
this line.
line?
This is an exchange line.
So by area, that's nearly twice as big as the area over here with the 297 and 298. And it means whether you have people or not, you still got to have lines along the road, correct?
Yes.
Much like the cable that wants so many miles, you've got to have it.
Well, actually, it's a lot dislike the cable, because if the cable doesn't want to come out that road, if they
They don't
can
have
pay
to.
for it, they don't have to. Whereas we have to serve them.
Okay, when I lived back when I was going to school, I lived on the Stetson Road, which was between Chazy and Champlain,
Yep.
and we should have been in the Chazy district, but I think the Champlain extended out, and there was dual lines out there.
It's possible, yeah. In the Cooperville area,
Down near Jerry, Nevada area, you know?
sure, that's one of the roads that we have a boundary on. Okay, let's see. Stetson Road is right here.
Yeah, okay. And we lived, Cooperville, this is Stetson here, I think that is
Yeah,
Stetson,
okay,
yes.
Stetson Road. So halfway down the Stetson Road is where our boundary cuts across.
Okay, because I was under the 298 at that time, yet I think Jerry has both the Chazy and the Champlain telephone, I believe now. His kids went to school in Chazy. What else can you tell us of significance on this? Does this show where your lines actually are? No, those are roads.
No, those are all just roads. The area coverage design maps show where all the cables go.
Okay.
These are actually blown up portions of the same type of map. Each one reflects a certain different tax district is how we have our plant broken up into.
Are all your lines above ground?
No, I'd say depending on which exchange we're in, we're probably 25 to 30% underground.
Underground. Out in the country, you mean?
Mostly in
out
mostly
country?
out in the rural areas.
Okay. And where you have to cross someone's land, let's say you get a right-of-way from the farmer or whoever owns the land out, you got a right-of-way you have?
If we're on private property, we obtain a right away from them.
When you're on state highway property, do you have to make any kind of a donation or to pay anything to have your poles on the state property along a county or state road?
All we need on a state highway, all we need are highway work permits to actually perform the work. And we do have to pay for those.
Does every house, and let's say in this Moore's area here, this whole 236, every house that's built there have an access to a phone if they want it?
Yes.
Without paying a long charge?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's very good coverage. That's a very important, as you said, that's the difference with cable, and you know, and the same with over here. In other words, if you lived a mile up a road, if it's not a private road, you'd pay up to their property?
Well, there are certain provisions in the tariff to charge for construction costs.
Okay, all right.
Over a certain amount of footage, I think it's 1,500 feet. I believe it's
Okay.
over 1,500 feet. We can charge, but
Okay.
we don't.
Is any of your area covered by radio rather than by solid lines?
No.
None of that either. Okay. Is there anything else of significance you want to tell me about here that would be interesting to the people on and?
Well, the one thing I wanted to point out, you did mention the Indian reservation down there in relation to the boundary. I wanted to point out that the boundary was established before the Indians were there.
Yes,
So it
okay.
has nothing to do with the Indians. Okay. It all
You
has,
didn't go around at the Indian
no,
reservation?
it all has to do with the lake.
Okay, it has to do with the lake. All right.
Why are they in the middle of the lake, Champlain?
That's a good point.
Minor,
Minor? Yeah, Dave will
No.
answer that. Because of the minor?
because of the minor influence in Chazy.
Well, you're talking about this lake. Calvin wants to know why our
Out
point
here.
is out in the middle of Lake Champlain.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the Vermont, it goes
Because
out to
that's the Vermont, New York state.
Oh,
we
line.
go out to the Vermont, New York.
Technically, that's where it is.
Exactly.
Okay.
Same as if you're out there fishing. If you cross over that line, you need a Vermont state fishing license.
Okay.
That's the only reason, that's.
Now, Dave is standing in just off to the side of Calvin, and someone mentioned along the way Public Service Commission. I think you did, Dave. And they pretty well tell you, would you come over in here. They pretty well tell you what you're going to do, right? You have to get approval, and you're under their control, quote unquote.
Absolutely, Bob. They mentioned once before, we are a semi-monopoly. We operate with a franchise granted by the state of New York. Our franchise is exclusive, and in having that, we also have to do whatever the Public Service Commission tells us to do. As Joe says, we have to serve everybody.
Okay. Now, in the case of Chazy, for instance, when Westport took over the Chazy, does that have to be approved by
Oh,
the Public
very
Service
definitely.
Commission? They could refuse it, in other words, right?
They could very well refuse it, and it has happened in cases where they felt that the merger was not in the best interest of the people that are being served. Then they turn them down. It happens.
I was recently out to the Midland Lawn and Garden, George Slosson, that was his father, right? Was in the
Yes,
Chazy
right.
Telephone Company?
Yeah.
And that was sold to the Westport, or is it a partnership?
No, it was sold.
It was sold directly to them. How are they in size compared to you as far as number of subscribers?
They have
And,
about half as many subscribers as we have. They cover pretty much the same
Just about the same.
amount of territory. What makes our subscribers are list higher is the village of Rouse's Point and Champlain.
Okay.
We have, as you pointed out, most of our territories in Moores.
Yes, the big
But
area.
the concentration of...
Your income is here and a lot of your expenses is there for work, right?
Well,
I mean, because
not
of
really.
distance, no?
No, it's we don't like to think of it that way, but there are more people in Rouse's Point and Champlain than there are in Moores.
Well, let's say they have telephones. Anyway, maybe that wasn't a good thing to say. Now, I don't know how far we're covering with this. The cable goes out, I guess, as far as Moore's Forks, right? I don't think it's out in here. So many of your subscribers are watching Hometown Cable,
Yes, very
except for the Shazy lower area here. Everything else is in our area, and they're going to see the two Southwicks, the father and son, Joseph and David. This is the older one right here. I want to point that out. And, all right, what else can we cover here? Your problem. You say you are also a manager of the people who go out and do the line installation, the repairs, who are out at the truck garage. Is that right?
Yes.
Are you the one that works on buying the trucks, for instance?
No, Dave buys the trucks.
Dave,
But he
Dad
likes to
still
do it.
does that, huh?
Sure, he
Yeah.
sure does.
And if you buy a car, do you have to get that cleared through Dad?
Yes,
Even when it's your own car?
absolutely.
Oh, gosh. Mom has something to say about that, too, though.
Oh, yeah.
All right. This is a very Hometown Cable we're watching, and we're in the office of Joe Southwick, and this is the area we're talking about in here. Anyone know how many square miles it is?
It's approximately 120.
120 square miles of Champlain Telephone Company coverage. A good patron of the Hometown Cable, bringing you these and many other shows, as I mentioned before. Southwick family in this Champlain area, Dave, for what, 100 years?
Just about. Yes.
About 100 years in the area, in addition to the telephone company of about 80 years.
That's right.
75, 85 years, I guess, right? You mentioned?
1903.
And no more Southwicks with farms, though, right?
No more Southwick with farm. Well, no, John Southwick has farms.
Does he keep cows on John's?
I don't think he keeps them.
He's raising metal. we were hoping to see John with his cars very soon on an interview like this.
Yes, John is the
Also.
only one that has any farming left.
Okay. And we're going to thank Joe very much, and Dave again, for being so cordial to us. This is one of the longest shows we've had, and certainly it's no one knows anything what's going on in here. Is there anything good going on? I don't mean you people. We mean the people outside. David gave me an awful look when I said, you don't know what's going on in here. The people watching who are not employees here don't know what goes on behind these doors, but we know the people that are inside know what's going on, and they've done their best today to show us and tell us about it. So Bob Venn with the program from Hometown Cable, what's going on here? And I hope you know better now than you did when you started watching this program. And we thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thanks, Bob.
Calvin. Thanks a lot. We blot out, between the two of us, we blot out the sun.
Did you ever come up the hill on Main Street in Champlain, New York, and make the curve next to the convent and wonder who this guy is and what that is up there and what goes on in this building? Well, I'm going to just give you a little clue. This is Dave Southwick, the president of the telephone company, and we've been talking with him for over an hour. If you want to see what we were talking about and what goes on in there, tune in this coming Sunday night, and you'll see Dave and some other parts of the personnel who work here, his son and others, who will tell us what goes on with the Champlain Telephone Company. And tune in Hometown Cable every night for a lot of surprises, good and bad, maybe. You'll see yourself on TV, see your relatives, see the smiling face. Look at his smiling face on TV. One of the Southwicks, and it'll be on this coming Sunday, 5 o'clock at night. It'll be on again at 8. And if you don't sleep well, it'll be on at 1 a.m. in the morning. And if you miss those 3 shows, tune in at 9 o'clock. Every day, it's at 5, 8, 1 in the morning, and 9 a.m. And thanks very much for watching Hometown Cable. You'll never know what you're going to see next.